First of all, thank you for making the time from your busy schedules to understanding about generative AI and specifically in my session about how generative AI can help organizations such as yours. Um, to start with, first, maybe it's good for me to introduce myself. My name is Vivek Subramaniam. I'm what we call the principal architect for the automotive and manufacturing sector in India. And my job is essentially helping customers such as yourself understand the potential of transformative technology and the implications it has for the business. Implications in terms of bottom line, top line performance specifically. Today, we will be covering an interesting topic about generative AI in manufacturing. And while I'm sure my colleagues so far have given a great view in terms of from a platform capability, what's possible within the Google ecosystem, I thought what would be relevant and useful is maybe look at key themes that we're seeing and potentially what kind of use cases Gen AI can solve for beyond the obvious use cases. So if you just look at generative AI in manufacturing and basis conversations that we're seeing globally and in India, the three key themes that are emerging, right? One is a lot of generative AI capabilities can be used to get closer to the customer and improve customer experience and allow you to serve the right product to the right customer with the right message. In terms of just designing the product, pre-product, and this is typically for any NPI launch, or even during the life cycle of, of a smart product, how do you leverage generative AI to create better product experiences? Third, while the focus is on supply chain and manufacturing, which is a large function in the enterprise, think of it as a theme where how generative AI can help get insights uh, in complex environments where there is constant peppering of information across multiple formats. What I'll do is I'll try to spend the next few minutes to make some of these themes a little more real, and I'll do that through the lens of use case and industry use case. I thought what may be interesting is to pick up an automotive sector, right? Because I believe the automotive sector is representative of multiple sectors in the sense that automotive obviously is a B2C focused segment, so that should appeal to the members of the audience who operate in that line of business. The second is automotives obviously have large supply chain and complex supply chain and manufacturing processes. So hopefully that applies to more B2B centric industries rather that are grappling with problems in that space, right? And of course, automotive being a large traditional enterprise, hopefully there are enough similarities within your organizations in terms of how to leverage new technologies in traditional enterprises. Let me take your attention to this particular slide now, right? And I think it's very important for us to start with looking at generative AI in not in a piecemeal or point use case manner, but in terms of how generative AI can be used across the value chain, because I truly believe there are transformative benefits to be had when you think of it as multiple use cases as opposed to a singular use case. And that approach will also give you a different lens in terms of how do you solve this problem and create those reusable capabilities that can accelerate other use case journeys. Now, to start with, if you look at the life cycle of a product, or in this particular case, a car, right? We truly believe that generative AI has some significant benefits in the vehicle development or the R&D development stage, right? There are use cases where we believe that it can help shorten the cycle it takes for research and the time it takes to come out with a new product while improving the product in a manner such that it speaks to the particular market, right? So that's one big construct. And I'll get a little closer into the terms of the use cases that we see. The second is customer experience. Now, organizations that have been on a digital transformation journey, this is a very key pillar, right? I believe that this would be very additive to initiatives that you already have, where you, like I mentioned, at the end of the day, want to be able to serve the right customer with the right product, with the right experience. And generative AI has a role to play. The third is around complex manufacturing supply chains, or even extended to internal operations. And here we will talk about how generative AI will change the way organizations consume information and also how they're able to stay ahead of complex environments, changing dynamics in the environment, and still get information in a proactive manner that allows them to take a decision optimally. What we'll do is we'll get a little closer into some of the use cases in the next section, and post that we can perhaps talk about how one might want to think about solving it from a platform standpoint and what Google brings to the table. Now, you start with the product development phase, right? Product developments are interesting life cycles in the enterprises. Especially when someone's generating a new product or even an incremental addition to the product, it typically starts a few years before the product is launched, right? And in some sense, it's a crystal ball gazing exercise where you're trying to understand what the consumer in the future is trying to buy, and then you place your bets on that. Now, this, of course, is a complex process, right? If you put yourself in the shoes of a product manager or a product line leader, they essentially need to understand the various trends of buying behavior. Now, if you look at this particular example on the right-hand side, one of the key things that they would typically do is they would go through a lot of industry journals, industry reports, market research reports, thought leadership papers, so on and so forth. And in a sense, what they're trying to do is they're trying to consume information across the internet and across various industry bodies and distill it into certain insights, right? And I think that's where Gen AI definitely has a role to play. Think of a scenario where you're essentially trying to understand what are the what are the buying behaviors of um, Gen Zs, who obviously will have great economic power in the coming years. And it's a great way of, and if you look at this example, essentially you can feed in a few industry reports, right? And you can ask specific questions. In this particular case, if you want to understand how do Gen Zs buy, right? Do they spend more time buying online, or do they like more in-person experiences? Are they price conscious? How do you think about new products such as electric vehicle and automotive, so on and so forth? Now, with Gen AI, you have the ability to pump in multiple sources of data, be able to summarize these articles in succinct manner, engage with these data sources by asking intelligent questions that can obviously give you very factual answers they find in these documents, right? And I think that's a great way of just cutting down the entire cycle and taking away efforts from grunge activity of just doing the research to getting insight, right? Another place where Gen AI is we seeing is capturing the imagination of organizations is just the design of products, right? A design, a design of a new product, of a physical product, of course, is a time-consuming process, and typically it starts with a set of designers creating a sketch on pen and paper, then leveraging digital tools, and then perhaps building physical models, right? So to understand how the product looks like. And this process, again, is a fairly time-intensive process. And I believe using generative AI in this space can really enable creativity and can help designers with options, right? Now, if you see this example, and this is something that a quick prototype that we built on the Google Model Garden, and that's a term that hopefully you're familiar by at this point. So this is one of the Google models that allow you to create images, right? We gave a very simple prompt in this one, asking them to generate a design for an EV bike with certain specifications. And as you can see, just with an untuned model, and which was a general purpose model rather, we were able to generate fairly interesting design suggestions, right? Now, just imagine organizations that treat this as an R&D exercise, and they build capabilities that allow you to generate products that speak to the design language of the organization. This, in my mind, is going to be a very it's going to be a very powerful tool that will make the life of designers very simple. Okay? Now, while I spend some time in terms of just new product introductions and the role that generative AI can play, um, there are there are use cases that probably are a little more popular in literature right now, and a lot of companies are talking about, and will be amiss not to talk about. But when you look at the customer experience side of things, right, I think the first thing that you would obviously want to do is be able to target your customer with appropriate content that speaks to the customer, right? And this is where we see generative AI's creative capabilities, right? And Within the Google ecosystem, there are again um, they are ISPs that operate in the space, and they are obviously first-party API services that enable you to do it. But just imagine the ability to create customized content, right, for a particular user. For example, if I'm, let's say, a car driver who likes who likes going on these long weekend drives during the day, right? A poster that speaks about a car that is great for these sorts of drives with a sunroof will perhaps appeal to me much better than a night drive, right? And the challenge always has been, how do you create this plethora of content, right? What generative AI would allow you to do is, working off a base of content, you can amplify the number of messages that you have, which could be then placed and make it appropriate for the media that you want to deploy this on. Another great example of customer experience is just simplifying the customer buying journey. This most organizations is a problem statement that you should be very familiar with, because a lot of organizations are looking at reducing digital friction points or physical friction points in the customer buying journey. In this particular example, now let's imagine the construct of a virtual dealer, right, or a virtual salesperson, where, let's say, I, Vivek, come into a website and want to essentially understand which is the best vehicle for me, for my requirements, which could be city drive, which could be weekend long drives, which could be fuel efficiency, which could be family space, so on and so forth. Now, as opposed to going through multiple pages in the website, you can bring all of this information through a fairly smart LLM-infused chatbot, right? Which not only which and given the fact that this is LLM, it kind of helps you break through all the disadvantages of traditional chatbots that require extreme amount of customization, right? And you can be fairly creative. You can do provide information in terms of the best potential car. You can help compare different kind of vehicles. You can also pull in some publicly available information on YouTube, so on and so forth, right? Therefore, what you're moving away from is static web pages, or what perhaps are bots with limitations, to more a smarter and a multimodal way of interacting with customers. Another example of where generative AI can use, and again from an internal operations standpoint, is the way we consume information. Today, most organizations are data rich, and unfortunately, it does not translate to being insight rich. And one of the primary reasons is data and the insights locked within siloed databases, IT driven data warehouses, or perhaps static dashboards. And you can really change the paradigm with generative AI by leveraging generative AI to, one, understand what the trends are by using an NLP based interface. So, for example, you want to understand the top 10 sales in a particular region. You want to understand the top 10 issues for bottleneck within your manufacturing line. This, we believe, is going to be a very key use to understand to understand insights that are locked away and make it simpler for consuming information. Therefore, we see this as an accelerator to accelerate data democratization journeys that enterprises may be already on. A similar construct, while it is not around data insights, it's about, in a structured manner, it is just about insights on external events that may have an impact on your operations, right? A great case, and I think, and a function that this speaks the most to, is perhaps supply chain. In the last 2 years, one does not need to mention the supply chain disruptions that have happened because of factors outside of the internal supply chain or the four walls of supply chain, right? So, how do you keep track of information which could be outside your data ecosystem, right? Which again, which could be things in terms of disruption because of containers, disruption due to public health issues, disruption due to weather patterns, so on and so forth. So I think one way to think about it is, how do you bring these data sets that are available and use the LLM capabilities of generative AI to interact with these data sets. So while we spoke about multitude of use cases, and while I've spoken about the use cases, I'm sure and hopefully two things have happened. One, you see resonance with use cases. Um, and while you see resonance with use cases, some use cases speak a lot stronger to you because they are more contextual, while some um, uh, may be important but may not be low-hanging fruits to speak or to say so, right? And the second would be perhaps a question saying, look, I get that I see the LLM nature, but wouldn't I need a lot more to kind of to get this at an enterprise space stage, right? Without, and move beyond the pilot purgatory. And that's absolutely right. I think when you look at generative AI and when you look at um, just the first statement I said, right? I think the transformative value is when once you start looking at generative AI use cases beyond siloed POC use cases, right? And I think that's where it is super important to identify and prioritize the use cases because there are two things. One, certain use cases may be high impact, right? But they may have higher time to market and higher cost to operationalization because you might need to build something custom. Second, there may be certain use cases which have incremental impact, but impact nonetheless, and maybe low-hanging fruits, right? And maybe those are great use cases to identify and pilot with. But the fact is, identification and prioritization of use cases and a clear view of the time and the effort it takes will help you, one, get short-term success, but also identify a strategy that can help with long-term success as well, right? The second is, I mean, a data first strategy, but a platform first strategy. If you look at generative AI as a pure API based interaction, then unfortunately it's the iceberg effect. You're probably seeing the 20% that you're used to consuming in the consumer world, but in the enterprise world, it's a complete different ball game. It is a completely different ball game because as an enterprise, you need to one, whatever model that you have, you will obviously need to make sure it's founded in ground truth, it's factual, and there's limitation and hallucination. Two, you're able to explain some of the data insights that you have. Three, if you have information that is sitting across multiple islands, right? You will only be able to do Gen AI use cases in a in a linear way, and which really doesn't help the organization. Four, there will be use cases which I said, which could be high impact. You could create a competitive advantage where you will need beyond just APIs. You will need the entire layer of solutions, right from the infrastructure to an MLOps platform to a data platform, and then finally, leverage certain foundational models, either be it Google or open source, to be able to engage, right? So having a view of the platform strategy is important, and I'll spend some more time in the next few slides. The third and fourth is, of course, organizational readiness. This is a new technology. Everyone's trying to, while there is a lot of excitement, I think there's a need to rationalize what is of value and the time it would take for value, right? And I think it goes back to the point of identifying and prioritizing those cases. The final thing is, look, more so than in any other technology, the ability to run POCs, the ability to identify what works, what does not work, and taking an iterative nature is but par for the course when it comes to generative AI, right? And I'm hopeful that the participants in the room have the organization structures that allow for this experimentation. If not, it is something that you might want to consider. But I'll go back to the point in terms of just data first strategy and the platform first strategy, right? What at Google we are very, very cognizant is of the fact if we need to enable the use cases we spoke about, right? It has to have a comprehensive approach and it has to meet the user where they are or the enterprise where they are from their capability standpoint. If you look at the bottom right, and if you look at the blue box which says AI practitioners, now this is a great example where there are use cases which have competitive advantage, high impact, but require some amount of work to be done to take general purpose LLM models and customize it for your business, right? And that's where the entire Vertex AI platform, and it's a true platform because it does not only provides an ML platform including auto ML, ML ops, but from a generative AI standpoint, it has a model garden. A model garden is a combination of Google state-of-the-art foundation models, which again are across text, chat, code, image generation, and perhaps by the time the video is out, audio and music as well. And it also gives access to the best-in-class open source models, right? So in essence, what we are allowing the enterprise and the data scientists to choose the best performing model for the best for their particular use case, because there is no one model that will rule them all. While that is focused on the AI practitioners, right? There is a lot of value that can be derived from generative AI from a developer community standpoint. Now, for example, there may be simple use cases where you would want to create some sort of a conversational bot that could be an information bot, could be a customer experience bot. But if you want to create chatbots that allow you to uh, query a certain repository, which could be structured or unstructured data, and then be able to provide factual information, then there is this entire suite called the Generative AI App Builder that enables that, right? Now, this is great for use cases where, again, there may not be a lot of customization required, but requires a fairly simple a flow of information, being able to get information from these data sources. And what we've done is we've created a suite of products called Generative AI App Builder that is targeted towards developers. The third, we believe that they are use cases that will be plug and play in nature. And for example, one use case that will cut across your for majority of the users is around contact center AI. Right. This has been a solution that Google has been investing for the last few years. The intent out here is how do you help expand your contact center capacity without having to depend on people, right? And without having to scale your staff linearly. Out here, what we do is we've infused the existing solution with LLM capabilities to be able to, one, act as an advisor, to be able to be a pre-screening set of pre-screen for your call center, which allows the users to, allows the enterprise to understand the questions that the users are asking for, the sentiment of the users, have summarization of the entire case history, and then if the call center AI does not solve for the user intent, then be able to hand it over to the end user, right? So as you can see, Google's approach from a platform capabilities is essentially ensuring the right building blocks are available depending on where you're in the organization, and not treat generative AI as a singular API-based use case. And therefore, we believe that not only a singular use case, but the entire set of use cases can help you accelerate on your journey. Hopefully, you found this session interesting, and I'll be happy to connect with you one-on-one on LinkedIn, or to send me a note in case my email ID is shared, to chat about this further. And once again, thank you for spending your time with us.